What's up everybody? I'm coming at you today with a much more casual video than I usually do on this channel. If there's one thing that I know more than anything, one thing that I have more unnecessary knowledge of than anything, it's Danny Phantom. And that's because for a period of my life, from probably 5th grade to junior year of high school, I was obsessed with it. And I can make a video about that at a later time, but today I wanted to give you guys my tier list of the Danny Phantom villains. I used the website Tiermaker and I pulled all the images from the Danny Phantom fandom wiki, so let's get into it. First one we've got here is Amorpho. I think he's just like a villain of the week enemy. This guy comes into the show and he sees that Danny's getting a lot of attention and he gets jealous, so then he mimics Danny. I'd say the story of this character is okay, so I'm gonna go with C tier. He doesn't really have that much dimension, but at least it's kind of interesting. Alright, next up we got the Box Ghost. I gotta say the Box Ghost is a great character. Not only does he appear in quite a few episodes, he's got a lot of powers, he can control his body and make his head detach, he's got telekinesis, he has hilarious lines, and an army of boxes. And he ends up being one of the more frequent ghosts in the show, and I think he has, strangely, like some character development that most of the ghosts don't have. Not only does the Box Ghost appear as a side character in a bunch of episodes, he also has his own episodes, so I think he deserves great. Dark Danny happens when Danny mixes his ghost half with Vlad's ghost half because they both are hurt and they want to be rid of the ghost half. I think this character forced Danny to face the actions he was making, although to say that he would become this evil ghost villain just from cheating on a test and that all of his friends would die in an explosion just from cheating on a test was kind of ridiculous, but we can go with it. He was really formidable, he had like every power imaginable, and he was kind of OP, so I'm gonna put Dark Danny in best tier. Okay, Dash Baxter, resident douchebag, and also voted most likely to get somebody pregnant before he graduates high school. I'm gonna put Dash on the okay tier. He has a little bit of character development, but he's not super interesting, and he's kind of still a bully like the whole show, even though they have like bonding moments or whatever. Next up we've got Desiree, aka Big Titty Genie GF. Main power is granting people wishes, which makes for some pretty interesting episodes. And whenever she was in an episode, it was usually like one of my favorites. I thought she tended to make things more interesting, and she's cute. So I'm gonna go with, I'm gonna go with best, because this is my personal list. Gregor, aka Elliot, aka Sam's pretentious douchebag art school boyfriend. Yeah, fuck that guy. Nothing else needs to be said. If you've seen this show, you know that he's literally the worst. Alright, next up we've got Ember. Of course she goes in best tier. Not only does she have a super memorable song that people I'm sure are still looking up on YouTube 10 years later. Ember, you will remember. Her powers involve music, which is super interesting, and she was in multiple episodes, and I think she was definitely a fan favorite throughout the entire show and still to this day. I actually thought her eye makeup was iconic, and I'm pretty sure that I did it on a cringy like Angel of Death Halloween costume in 2008 or whatever, 2009, so I'll drop a picture there. Femalian and a few other of the female monster characters, I think I'm just gonna group them all together, and they're all like plays on actual pop culture. Okay, next is Freak Show, and Freak Show is actually one of my favorite characters and one of my favorite villains from the entire show. He's really only in 2 episodes, which are Control Freaks and Reality Trip, but those ended up being 2 of my favorite episodes of the entire show. I'm putting him in best tier. He's the ringmaster of a freaky circus, which is cool. And I just want to say, before y'all were talking about the Thanos gauntlet, I don't even watch the Avengers, I don't know what it's fucking called. We gotta talk about the reality gauntlet, which is basically the same concept. It's gauntlet where they need all the pieces and they're all different colors, so they probably ripped that from the comic books. He's also probably one of the most evil. I mean, he kidnapped Danny's loved ones and almost killed them and like put them on like a death roller coaster, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, best tier. Fright Night. Honestly, one of my least favorite villains from the show. Every time he was in an episode, I thought I made it boring. He was very generic. so I'm gonna put him in the bad tier. Okay, next up is Ghost Rider, and he is from the episode where it's Christmas, and he makes it so that everything that happens in the episode is a rhyme. And actually, even though he's only in one episode, I think he's one of the most interesting and coolest villains in the show, so I'm gonna put him in the gray tier. Next up is the Guys in White, a very blatant and obvious ripoff of the Men in Black, and all they ever do in the show is antagonize Danny and make his life worse, and I think they're annoying, and anytime they came up I would just groan and kind of gloss over, so I'm putting them in the bad tier. So basically, this ghost sees Tucker and thinks that he is his old master, I guess, and then he convinces Tucker to be the master and tries to take over the world. But I actually think these episodes kind of cheapen Tucker's character, and I don't think this character is super interesting, and that's actually one of my least favorite episodes, so I'm gonna put him in the bad tier. Okay, next up is Johnny 13. I actually kind of like this character. I'm gonna put him in the good tier. He's not super amazing. We don't see a lot of development from him, but he is in like 8 episodes, and he rides a motorcycle, and he is a ghost, and he manages to cause a significant amount of trouble throughout the show, so I'm gonna put him in good tier. Plus, unlike most of the ghosts that Danny fights, he doesn't actually like want to kill him. He just kind of likes messing around and causing trouble, and I don't feel like any of their fights are ever like, I'm gonna end you forever. He also tries to date Jazz at some point in the show, so he actually does interact with more of the characters, and I think he's one of the few ghost characters that interacts with humans without them like freaking out, because Jazz actually kind of dates him for a second. He's a teenager, but he's also probably like several hundred years old, so kind of like a Twilight situation. Still a better love story than Twilight. Kitty is Johnny's girlfriend, and actually she was one of my favorite girls in the show, so I'm gonna put her in good tier. I really like her design. I think it's super cool and edgy, but I don't really think there's much to this character except for the episode Girls' Night Out, where Kitty and Ember and Spectra all team up to get back at their boyfriends, which is actually one of my favorite episodes of the whole show as well. So I'm gonna put her in good tier. Clemper, I would stop watching whenever he came on the screen. F tier. Lunch Lady, I'm a vegan. Her monster's made out of meat. I'm gonna have to put her in the bad tier. Lydia, she's Freak Show's assistant, and her tattoos fly off of her body. She's pretty cool, but she never even really speaks and is just kind of like subservient, so I'm gonna put her in the okay tier. Nocturne, totally putting him in the best tier. Okay, Nocturne is in one of my favorite episodes of the entire show, and that is his only episode except for when he shows up in Phantom Planet. But Nocturne is basically a dream-causing entity, and his body is made out of stars. So like in the episode when they're animating him, like his body is like a mask that moves over like a plane of stars, and it produced the coolest effect, and I just remember thinking like when I saw it, you know, in like 2006 or 7 or whatever, that it was the coolest thing ever. That episode also produced his powers, and that episode also produced some of my favorite moments between the different characters and showed what was going on inside of the characters' heads and what they thought of the other characters in the show, so it kind of demonstrated some internal perceivings of relationships, which I thought was super interesting. So overall, I gotta put Nocturne in best tier. Pariah Dark, I don't like this character. Every time he's on the screen I was bored, so I'm gonna put him in the bad tier. Penelope Spectra, okay, she's really creepy. The way that Spectra works is she's like the counselor at the high school. So somehow Casper High hired a ghost, because I guess there's no background checks in this universe. And she basically becomes the counselor slash therapist for students. But instead of actually counseling them, she like steals their youth away to remain beautiful. She actually ended up being in a few episodes, and she was also in that episode Girls' Night Out where they get revenge on their boyfriends, so overall putting her in great tier. Prince Aragon, no depth, going in awful tier. Dorothea, I mean, she's sweet, but she also looks like literally every Danny Phantom girl OC ever created, and it's kind of like hilarious, like how much this image just looks like every fan art girl drawing ever. No, she's just a dragon who wants some love. so I'm gonna put her in the okay tier. Alright, Sydney Poindexter is a kid who was bullied and stuffed in his locker so much that he died. He uses his powers to bully bullies and protect the nerds, so that's pretty cool, and I think he and Danny become friends at the end, and he has a pretty average amount of powers and shows up in a few episodes. So I'm gonna put him in the okay tier. Alright, cool. Next up we've got Skulker. He's probably one of the most frequent enemies in the entire show. He's a hardcore ghost hunter. He appears in like 17 episodes, and he's one of the main antagonists to the show, and the funniest part is he's actually just a tiny blob ghost in this big ghost hunting suit. He definitely interacts with Danny the most, and they like switch between getting along and being adversaries throughout the show, so I'm gonna put him good tier, honestly, because he shows up a lot, but I never thought that he was super interesting, even though his characterization was good. Next up is Tucker Phantom, aka what happens when Tucker wishes that he could be like Danny and Desiree grants the wish, and then he turns into like a evil ghost monster dude. This episode was a pretty good depiction of Tucker's like lust for power, and I think that actually kind of hints into him being the mayor at the end, even though a lot of people didn't say it made any sense. Because there are several episodes throughout the show where Tucker just suddenly gets like frustrated of being in the background and goes crazy, like the one with Hotep Raw. So I'm gonna put him in okay tier because it was interesting to see Tucker develop and show some jealousy and not just have him be like a one-note best buddy character to Danny, but it's not done particularly well, nor would I go back to watch this episode super often. Okay, Undergrowth. I'm gonna put him in great. I actually really liked that episode. It was called Urban Jungle, and I think it was one of the longer episodes, and I think that's probably one of the ones I watched the most of any, probably just because I really liked Plant Sam, but he basically just wants to wipe aside humanity for the careless destruction of nature, and actually now that I think about it, I think he deserves best tier because humans are awful and nature deserves to be treated better than we treat it currently. And yeah, I totally agree with his agenda. Cover all the cities in vines. And stop killing animals while you're at it. He's also extremely powerful and capable of taking over the city with his plant powers within a very short period of time, so I guess he deserves to be up higher on the tier list. Alright, the next enemy is Valerie Gray. They're enemies in the beginning, and then they date, and then they're friends. But either way, I think Valerie is one of the best characters in the show, and I wish they had spent more time going into her character in season 3. Her relationship with Danny was super interesting, and I think that when they dated and then he found out who she was, it presented one of the most interesting episodes. Alright, next we've got Vlad Plasmius, and I gotta say that he would be best tier, but I'm gonna put him in great only because of all the disgusting fan art that his relationship with Danny spawned over the years. I mean, it's literally horrifying, and also he's really predatory and literally sleeps with like a stuffed doll of Danny's mom, Maddie. And you can see that in the episode with Nocturne. So I gotta take him down a tier for being really, really, really creepy, even though that was probably an intended part of his character. Also, his plot and his intentions are a little bit unoriginal. I mean, all he wants to do is take over the world. That's literally it. It goes from like want to date Maddie to want to take over Danny's family and kill Jack to want to take over the entire world. Alright, next up we've got Vortex, aka the villain that controls the weather. I liked the episode that he was in a lot, but I don't find him particularly memorable. He was one of Danny's most powerful enemies since he literally controlled the weather, and he was so strong that Vlad and Danny had to work together to beat him. And I think he produced a really fun episode, so I'm gonna put him in the good tier. Next up we've got Walker, the warden of the ghost prison. I never found his character super interesting or charming or anything, so I'm gonna put him in the okay tier. And we've got Youngblood, who I actually did find charming. He's a young, mischievous pirate slash astronaut slash cowboy. But Youngblood does have one of the coolest powers in the show, and that's that he cannot be seen by adults, and that tends to make the stories that he's involved in more interesting, so I'm gonna put him in the good tier. So I just ranted about Danny Phantom for 36 minutes, and I edited it down to about a third of that, but if that doesn't tell you how obsessed I was with this show when I was a kid, then I don't know what will. If you'd like to see another video about this show from me, I can read you guys my crappy fanfiction. I can show you my ridiculous plethora of fan art. And I've been thinking about doing a full in-depth review like I did of As Told by Ginger, so let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll make content about that distant, dark part of my life that I've totally dissociated from. No, but for real, Danny Phantom was an awesome show. I had all the episodes on iTunes, I could draw all the characters. Since I've seen all the episodes so many times, I thought it would be really fun to make this ridiculously specific tier list for something that nobody cares about, because that kind of thing is what my channel is all about. Stuff nobody cares about. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment so we can chat. Tell me who I ranked incorrectly and what your opinions are, and if you want to see more of me, then smash the subscribe button. I try to make videos twice a week. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but I'm doing my best, and that's what matters. That's all I've got for you guys today. Be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!